Should you use a buyer's advocate or buyer's agent? Guys, give me 10 or 15 minutes of your time and we're going to explore whether it's worth using a buyer's agent or a buyer's advocate. I'm going to open your eyes to a couple of things that you may or may not have been aware of. Let's go. Right, buyer's agent overview really. Let's look at what a buyer's agent is in this video. Let's look at the benefits of using a BA, disadvantages of using a buyer's agent, and let's look at the things to be wary of when we are looking to use a buyer's agent. So an overview of what a buyer's agent actually is. A buyer's agent is a licensed professional and they represent property buyers. They navigate the market, or they ought to. There is no emotional connection to what they purchase. So unlike a novice investor, unlike someone looking to purchase their principal place of residence, there is no emotional connection from the buyer's agent's point of view as to the property that they purchase for their clients. They handle all aspects of the purchase. They save the client money, so they claim to. And they are different to the selling agent. The selling agent is working for the vendor, the seller. The buyer's agent is working for the client looking to purchase a investment property. Now, there are a couple of research processes that we want to touch on. There's the proper research process and the not so proper research process that we'll touch on the next slide. So generally, buyer's agents will start off with an introductory call with the client. You'll see that all over social media. Book a free introductory call. The word free is put there on purpose to get people's attention to book that introductory call with the buyer's agent. Now, generally they will go ahead and create a brief. They'll talk about price points, location, property types, and your goals and your strategies as the client, as what you'd like to achieve. And typically the goal and strategy may involve multiple purchases, which is great for the buyer's agent because they got that repeat business coming through. They'll also research different markets. They'll utilize different metrics, market trends, previous growth, population growth, supply and demand metrics, and projected growth. They'll look at environmental factors and risks, or they ought to anyway, and they have access to off-market opportunities. Now, the poor research process. So buyer's agents have limited knowledge of some markets, and some buyer's agents have limited or poor knowledge of many markets. Now, they have a poor understanding, or they can have a poor understanding of the supply and demand metrics, the previous growth, the government spending metrics in those areas. Just to name a few, buyer's agents are great at marketing. They're great at creating fancy charts, using big words, using buzzwords like passive income, early retirement, financial freedom. They're the sort of words that cause people to pay attention, to get people in, to lure people in. A lot of buyer's agents have very poor brief creation. They don't truly understand what the client sitting in front of them actually wants. And the brief that they create has nothing to do with achieving that goal for that client. And I've seen that firsthand with many people that I know using BAs, and the briefs that they have given these people is, some of them I just look at and shake my head in disbelief. A buyer's agents generally want to close out the deal. Right, and remember, buyer's agents have no ramifications post-sale, something I'll touch on later on in this presentation. And another very key important point that I want you guys to remember is the person that you see on social media, he or she is not personally looking at your deal. Just remember that, especially the bigger agencies that have hundreds of clients. They don't have, it's physically impossible. They don't have time to sit there and look at your deal or look at many people's deal, specifically on that one-on-one basis. Market exposure, is it a myth or is it legitimate? Now, all buyer's agents claim to have great market exposure, right? And to a degree, this can be true, and I'll tell you why. They have multiple offices around the country, so that in itself is going to give them more exposure. They have large teams of researchers. Some of these big buyer's agencies have teams of 40, 50, or 60 people, if not more. They have researchers, they have property acquisitionists, they have buyer's agents, they've got buyer's agents assistants. So they have larger teams, right? They have a high budget to spend on advertising. Guys, if a buyer's agent is charging $20,000, $25,000 a purchase, and they're doing 20 to 25 purchases a week, like some of them claim they do the maths. Do the maths. That is a very high budget, and they allocate a lot of that budget to advertising. They have a large social media presence, right? So that also is market exposure, and that is true. That is accurate. And one thing that we can't take away from the fact is that buyer's agents have more time than the day-to-day investor, right? People like us, people that are working careers and jobs and have families, and we don't have the time like a buyer's agent would to make, 20, 30, 40, 50 calls to different agents a day. That is legitimate. They have more time. That is their full-time role. So they have more time to build those contacts and connect with more agents. That is true. Now, the myth, or some of the myths. Buyer's agents do not have access to as many off-market properties as they claim. Please take this point on board, right? All buyer's agents claim they have access to large swaths of off-market properties, and that is simply not true. There is the same limited stock available to buyer's agents and investors, and that's another point at the bottom of this slide that I touch on. Buyer's agents, due to their presence, are often hand-fed opportunities from selling agents. Guys, hear me out. If you're a selling agent wanting to make a quick dollar, or you're a lazy selling agent wanting to make a quick buck, and you probably see these big buyers agents popping up on your newsfeed all the time, it's not hard for the selling agent to pick up the phone, call a buyer's agent and say, listen, I've got 4 or 5 properties coming up for sale in this area. Do you have 4 or 5 clients ready to go? Let's do some quick transactions. Bang, bang, bang. You make your money, we make our money. We look after our vendor, you look after your client, and it's happy days, right? So a lot of the times, buyer's agents don't actually get that exposure through their own hard work in an area. A selling agent will generally open that door for them. Why? Because it's easier for the selling agent. Instead of doing open homes and listing properties and going through the marketing campaign, if you can get together 4 or 5 properties in an area that has a bit of hype around it, and you contact a big buyer's agency, more often than not, they're going to accept that. They're going to put 4 or 5 clients in the area and happy days. And they're going to claim to their clients, we've got our contacts, we've got these off market, 1, 2, 3. So it works good for the selling agent and the buyer's agent. So just bear that in mind when you hear these, these slogans that these big buyer's agents put out there about having, exposure and contacts and access. It is true to a degree, but a lot of the times it's a selling agent that's opened the door for these big buyer's agents, right? And like I touched on earlier, the same amount of limited stock is available to all of us investors, guys, not just buyer's agents. There is no top secret stock list that exists in Australia that's only accessible to buyer's agents. That is simply not true. They have more time to find that stock potentially than what the day-to-day investor does, sure. But it's just the same amount of limited stock and it's available to all of us investors. The purchase process. So generally a buyer's agent deals with the selling agent on the client's behalf. They organize the building and pest. They could potentially organize some quotes for minor repairs that were identified in the building and pest. They will somewhat deal with the conveyancer on your behalf, but there is a lot of work that you have to do with the conveyancer because they're all legal documents. You need to sign them. The buyer's agent can't sign it on your behalf. So that begs a couple of questions, right? Does it actually save your time? Is it an illusion? Are you being sold an illusion if you work with a buyer's agent? Is it worth the fee, which we'll touch on later on? I've seen some of my friends use buyer's agents. I've seen people that I know use buyer's agents, and I'm not saying it's wrong or right. I'm just saying, is it an illusion? Does it actually save you time? I mean, they don't seem any less busy than what I do when I'm securing an investment asset. So something to consider. Now, market selection is a big one. Is it genuine or is it misguided? Now, every single buyer's agent claims to use a data-driven approach. How many times do we hear that saying? We use data-driven to research markets, right? Now, some of the deals that I've seen, because I do a lot of deal reviews for a lot of people that are using buyer's agents, some of these guys put their clients in very questionable areas. Questionable how? Okay, they've got higher vacancy rates, 4-5% vacancy rates. They've got a small population. There's flood risks. They're poor yields. Now, these are all things that are going to hamper you as an investor's continued growth and continued accumulation of assets in your portfolio. So that's something to really consider. Some of the areas that buyer's agents put clients in is questionable. Now, buyer's agents use the same data platforms available to all of us. Please recognize this point, guys. We are all able to use the same data platforms that buyer's agents use. There is no government top secret data platform available to buyer's agents like they like to allude to. It's available to each and every one of us, from free information online to paid data platforms. Buyer's agents are flooding small regional locations and creating Ponzi scheme-like effect. Now, guys, this can be very dangerous, right? If you are a novice investor and a buyer's agent's proposing to you go into and we're seeing this happen right now in regional Victoria and regional New South Wales. Clients are being put into areas with 5,000, 10,000 population at best, and it's creating this false growth and Ponzi scheme and investor frenzy only for it to all topple over in a couple of years when the investment capital moves from there. guys, you've got to think long term. Unless it's a specific strategy of a short-term equity growth, you've got to think mid to long term, and you've got to really question whether the market selection is genuine or not. Now, another great marketing gimmick that every single buyer's agent uses is below market value. We buy below market value. Now, I want to expose this to a degree, right? And I want you all to understand what this truly means. Buyer's agents, the bigger buyer agencies, have internal valuers, right? So it's funny that generally most of the properties that come back when they're presented to a client are below market value. And at the very minimum, they're below market value roughly by the same amount as what the buyer's agency fee is, right? Now, how clever is this as a marketing justification to use their service? Spend 20 grand on our service and we're going to purchase you a house, a property that is below market value by 20 grand. So really you've lost nothing. You've spent 20, but you've saved 20, so you're broken even. Guys, please just remember the intent behind the words that are being said when you see these slogans being thrown out on YouTube, right? I just want you to ask yourself one question. Ask yourself this. As a vendor, right, if you're a vendor, you want to sell a property, especially in a moving market like Perth or Brisbane or regional Victoria now or Adelaide or Darwin, why would you sell it off market? Why would you sell it below market? Why? Why would a vendor not take their property to market, create a frenzy, create people outbidding one another, and that FOMO effect, and potentially make an extra $40,000, $50,000, $70,000 extra? Why? These properties that are off market, you got to ask yourself, why are they off market, especially in markets that are moving? Another great marketing tactic that buyer's agents use is look at our growth in numbers. They love to post client success stories in the last 5 years of great purchases and great equity growth. Now, I've done my research on buyer's agents, the big ones that you see on YouTube, and generally they've all started in that mid 2010s or just before COVID hit, 2017 to 2019, right? You need to understand, most of Australia has boomed since COVID, especially Brisbane, Adelaide, Perth, and now Darwin. So you need to ask yourself this question. Is it skill on the buyer's agent behalf? Is it luck? Did the black swan event of COVID just work out at the right time where they were positioned in a way where they could take advantage of that? And I'm not saying they've done anything wrong. I'm just saying, was it a combination of black swan event and luck that's put them in these areas to be able to purchase properties that have grown regardless? Don't be fooled by the numbers, guys. If you'd bought a property in Perth or Brisbane in 2019 without a buyer's agent, potentially you'd still have the same growth. So whilst BAs want to, give this illusion that because of them they've achieved this amazing growth, most of Australia's boomed regardless. Just keep that in mind when you see these client success stories. Now, the catch is the fees, right? Some buyer's agents operate a percentage of sale model. Others apply a fixed price, a non-refundable deposit. Now, this is a genius tactic, right? Because if you've committed $3,000 to $4,000 as a non-refundable deposit, and then you're no longer happy with the deals being presented to you, or it's taking too long, it's going to take a lot of courage for you to say, you know what? I don't want that $3,000 or $4,000. I'm going to lose that deposit, but I'm going to walk away. Who's going to do that? Barely anyone, if anyone. So it's a great hook and line marketing tactic where you pay your non-refundable deposit, you're hooked, you're in. You have to wait now. You have to accept a property and pay the rest of the fee, guys, because you're not going to want to walk away from that $3,000 or $4,000 deposit that you've paid. And just remember something else. Whilst it's perfectly legal to do this, a lot of these BAs have their own referral agreements with accountants and mortgage brokers, right? So they're all working under that same ecosystem. And it is, I'll reiterate, it is legal. But just remember that you're going to be hearing a similar message from your accountant, from your broker, from your BA. Just bear that in mind. Now, finally, I want to finish with this. Why use a buyer's agent? Will it save you time? Sure, it may save you time. Absolutely. May you get a property which is off market? Sure, but you need to ask yourself, why is it off market? Especially if it's in a growing market, why is it off market? Will you get good growth? Well, that's maybe, depending on the market, depending on whether it's sustainable. Are you in a little regional town with very, very poor diversification of their economy, with 5,000, 10,000 population, with a stagnant population increase, with poor internal migration? Well, you may get short-term growth, but is it sustainable? That's what you have to ask yourself. The last 2 points here are very important before I finish this video, guys. Are buyer's agents liable post-settlement for promised performance? No. If a buyer's agent sells you a property saying it's going to grow 15% in the next 2 years and it doesn't. It does 10% or 5%. Can you go back and ask for a refund? No. Are they liable? No. Just remember that, guys. When they're throwing out graphs and figures and projected growth, just remember that they are not liable post-settlement. And the last point really grinds my gears, right? You hear all these big buyers agents say, not in the exact words, but they allude to the fact that it's very hard to compete or invest in Australia without using a BA. That is absolutely not true in the slightest. We have the same data platforms that they have. They may have more time than us, but if you're diligent and you understand the market and how things work and you teach yourself and you're driven, you can 100% invest without using a buyer's agent, and you can invest well and you can build a portfolio to secure both your future and your family's future. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. This is not a bash against buyer's agents. This is just to open up some of the catchy slogans and phrases that we see spread all over social media, and just to really study the intent behind the words, the intent behind the slogans, and to really potentially save ourselves from making costly mistakes and costly errors. Guys, till the next video, take care. Happy investing.